When you end up in WWF in 2001, who calls you? What's the pitch about you coming in?
I made the decision. I called Paul. I, here's the decision. I didn't want to go and sell out, and that's how I looked at everything because my head was so ECW, like we really hit each other. It's important to me. And I called Paul and I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to talk to someone about coming to work because I knew that I was sought after. And then all I had to do was say the word. And I did. And Paul said, great, let me call you back. I'll talk to JR. And I had to meet with Jim Ross in Los Angeles at a Marriott because I had a reputation for being hard to get along with. And that's because I left during the invasion angle after Paul had sold me to Vince and not told me. And then when something smelled funny and I had a first complaint, Paul said, let's go. Well, let's go. And not knowing that I was breaching a deal that I didn't even know I had on the table, I was given the reputation for being hard to get along with because that's definitely the opposite of a company man that says, yes, sir, whatever you want, I'll do it. Because it was about doing a job. And I was like, that, I'm ECW. Why am I going to do a job on WWE to a WWE guy? What are we trying to prove here? The WWE's better than ECW? What kind of story is that? That, like, we're better off not being here. And so anyway, the meeting went well with JR and then boom.
And when is it at that meeting that you find out they're going to bring ECW back a little bit, or?
No, I found out live in person at my starting date. I had a date, July whatever, something, 2001. I don't know when it was, but it was 2001, right? And so I was like, I sold out. I'm going to go to WWE. I'll probably make a lot of money, but they're going to call me, bank robber Van Dam or something stupid, make me a character. I thought that's what they were all about, Batman and Robin Van Dam. I don't know. Something stupid.
Because there's a lot of stories from WCW people who came in that said that they were totally unwanted and that it was like still a big, bit tension. What was it like for the ECW guys, for you?
Yeah. So I went there on day one, not knowing creatively what they were going to do with me, and I'm in the stands in the seat, in the daytime before the show, and Tommy Dreamer comes up to me, and I'm like, "Whoa, Tommy! What are you doing here?" And he threw me an ECW shirt, and I was like, "Whoa!" And man, my spirit got an erection, I was suddenly a spiritual art-on. And I was like so happy to be representing ECW on their TV, because the reason I didn't want to be a character, besides the fact that it's stupid and it would have sucked, is also is also like it would stop my momentum, erase my past, and then make everything I've done not matter. And by representing ECW, I was adding depth to my story, and adding on to it, and I was there to continue what the people knew me for, and so it was a whole different agenda. So I loved it, and you're right. A lot of the guys didn't have as good of spots or didn't have the talent really. What was weird was they would fly everybody in, and then everybody would look up on the wall at the matches, and then if you weren't on there, then you would try to get a flight home. And it was dumb to waste all that money, but it was important to them that everybody show up, and then they would probably put the card together just that morning, probably at the arena. But I remember seeing some of the guys. I remember seeing Bagwell looking at it, and and he wasn't on it one day, and then they're like, there was some kind of rule like he can't leave until after 2 o'clock or something, because some people would try and catch a quickest flight, and they want to make sure they don't have any changes or something. But that was crazy, and I was never sent home. I was always booked. I was always booked on all the Raws and SmackDowns, even when I was branded as one or the other. And I'm kind of used to being around. They don't have to pay me like they paid John Cena, but the people love me.
That first night that you came in and you get flung the ECW shirt and ECW come in and join the Invasion, at the end of that show, it's revealed on TV that the new owner of ECW is Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. How do you kind of do you get ECW guys kind of recognize, we know what this is, it's not really ECW, there's nothing to get annoyed about? Or are you like, Stephanie's in charge, this is rubbish? Like, what's the reaction?
Mixed reaction. My thoughts were, this is pretty cool, because this is what you got to work with. You know what I mean? Sure, it'd be cool if you had this to work with, but you don't. So what are you going to do? How are you going to make ECW mean something? What kind of leverage could it have? And then if Stephanie's going to be the head of it, to me, that meant, cool, there's going to be some cameras pointing our way, as opposed to just being something that they're not putting anything into. So that's how I looked at it. I really thought the whole Invasion alliance angle, at least on paper, was pretty damn cool. WCW and ECW versus WWF. I mean, for a wrestling fan, that's just like the thing that could never happen. It's what's the comic book word? Amalgam. You don't know it? Look it up. I'm telling you, it's amalgam. But that's when like Superman would fight Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, Marvel versus DC, like that. Great, but I don't think they necessarily had the best of WCW.
Don't talk about Buff Bagwell like that. I did want to ask you, so, you were involved with a lot of big names on TV those first few months. You're in there with Jericho, you're in there with The Rock, you're doing segments with Stephanie and Vince. That must have given you a pretty good feeling that, like, they're going to do stuff with you, you're going to be a featured part of the show.
You would think so. Somehow, my memory of that time period was such that even if I was totally crushing it and doing really well, whatever I was promised let me down enough to really not believe anything was going to happen until it happened. And at the same time that certain things were happening, it seemed to balance off pretty good with times of frustration. So it's almost like I didn't even really notice what was going on. Like sometimes people will talk about, you beat this Kurt Angle and The Rock and this guy and that. And I'll be like, I did not, and I don't. So some of it, I don't remember, because what I remember is them talking about, we're going to do this with you and this with you, and then instead, I'm putting Luther Reigns over. No offense to Luther Reigns, but but he was known as not being a great wrestler, and I was so pissed when I went back to Japan with WWE, because I just told you that was a big part of my career, and now I get to go back as a big WWE star. There's a word for that. It's called senpai, and that's when you leave as a young boy and come back. Not that I was young in '99, but anyway, big star. And then I was wrestling Luther Reigns and got beat by him, and it just like there was always things like that would not only piss me off, but also make me feel like they don't have good intentions for me. You know what I mean? And so because all that was always going on, I didn't have time to mark out. Not that I would also, because that's not in my nature, but I can see where a lot of wrestlers would. They would take that moment and allow themselves to really soak in the moment if there were such big marks that was like a fantasy or part of their dreams. You know what I mean? If they were like, oh my God, I beat The Rock. Oh my God, like for me, I was never, after I got into the business, I wasn't allowed to be a mark. That was stripped from me right away, and it became all about business. And then, like I said, I was experiencing all these frustrations and politics backstage. So what you were seeing out in the ring happen was just, like a night by night, could be whatever to me.